We've got three excellent panelists today. So we've introduced Edgar. Let me just introduce the other two. First of all, we've got Bradley Neille. Hey, Brad. After 16 successful years in the real estate industry as an award-winning top producer with South Africa's premier brands, Brad decided to take his career to the next level by partnering with eXp Realty in 2022. And Brad has built his real estate sales business on the traditional values of honesty, integrity, service excellence, and hard work, and believes that accurate and targeted communication is critical to achieving his clients' objectives. He's a dedicated father to 3 beautiful girls. I am too. Yours are just a bit younger than mine, so wait until they get to their teenage years. And strives to set an example to them of always reaching for and exceeding one's goals and dreams. Thank you, Brad, for being with us. And then Jonathan Broekman, despite accidentally stumbling into real estate in 1988, were many of us born then? Eh? It has now become Jonathan's passion. His focus is now paying forward the opportunity he was granted in this industry. Jonathan says that although many aspects of his job have changed during his years in the industry, what remains unchanged are the basics of honesty, energy, and service. His real estate agency, Homes of Distinction, is now in its 28th year, and it still offers the same service to many of the same clients, time and again, on these same basic principles of honesty, energy, and service. I have personally known Jonathan for a few years, and I always enjoy his dry sense of humor, and especially his immense wisdom he shares in both life and business. So guys, we've got a very useful panel discussion today on what I think, and the impression I get, are 2 of the most important issues that estate agents experience today, which is landing quality mandates. So I might have 40 mandates, but are they quality? And I mean, we can discuss whether that's even a thing. And then the second one is price counseling sellers. I think in Gauteng, I personally, when I was in Johannesburg, my wife and I, we bought 2 houses. Both houses we sold after 4 years. Both houses we sold for less than we bought them for, which is a great pity, considering, yeah, and the same, I've got friends and family members in Cape Town who have similar experiences. Of course, they're a whole lot more wealthier than some of us who live in Joburg. But I remember having discussions with my wife when we sold a house in Parkview a year and a half ago, and my estate agent mind was speaking versus her as a seller, and then I had my other half of me thinking as a seller, and it was heartbreaking and devastating actually to lose so much money. So I presume that's an experience that we have in Johannesburg or in Pretoria at the moment. So let's just start off with the first question. So what do you guys think is a quality sales mandate? I mean, if there is such a thing, and if it is such a thing, why is it important? Brad, you start.
Sure thing. So we all know about the 4 Ds: death, divorce, debt, and departure. Those, for me, are critical, and you need to establish what the seller's reason for selling is. If one of those 4 applies, then that absolutely is a mandate that you want. That's a quality mandate, in my opinion.
Okay, great. Jonathan, is there anything to add to that?
That would be the first question, to establish that your seller is a seller and not just a tire kicker asking for your opinion.
And Edgar, your comment?
I think it's great points to actually identify those. In addition to that, it's also, landing a quality mandate is someone that has done, I think with the co-speakers that I've mentioned, is someone that has done so much research on what they want to perhaps achieve in an area, and it's also an agent that can maybe help them price the right, or price the property at the right asking, should I say. So I think landing a quality mandate is one that that is going to be able to at least generate more leads for you that you can sell.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, so talking about the price, Brad, for me, it's a bit of a, when I'm thinking quality mandate, the 4 Ds are critical, and thanks for that reminder. Amazing how things haven't changed since 1988 and me 2002, so the same things, the rules apply. But But I mean, isn't pricing also, I mean, so the motivation we speak to, the 4Ds is the motivation, right? But now, like, I need 10 million for a house. And you're thinking, like, no ways.
To me, pricing is secondary to the reason for sale. I think for me, the reason for selling is everything. If the reason isn't there, you're wasting your time, basically. Even if it's priced correctly, you could be wasting your time if the reason for selling isn't there. So price comes after the reason for sale, in my opinion.
Okay, cool. Jonathan, is that everything on when you're talking about a quality mandate, and the reason I'm saying this is as a sales manager, we're saying the first objective is to get leads and then get mandates. And then I'm seeing the list of mandates, and I mean, some of our team members might have 30 mandates and they haven't got sold anything in the last 6 months. So is that a problem with quality mandates?
So when I went to a state agency school 30 years ago, a sole mandate was described as a post-dated check. You all remember what checks are. Yeah. Now, a sole mandate has to be for a reasonable period at the right price. I would say that those two are critical.
Okay, so as a sales manager, what are you saying to the agent has got 10 mandates but hasn't got a sale in 6 months? Sale in 6 months?
Yeah, very quickly you need to determine that the mandate is at the right price, and that's judged by the stats and the feedback and the quality of the leads.
Okay, I'm being a bit technical here, but Brad, you would say that first. So would you say, in addition to saying the pricing, which would be my first go-to, you're saying let's first find out, or have we found out what the reason for selling is?
To my mind, that's critical. As I say, if the seller's reason for selling is not there, the motivation for letting the house go, particularly in a tough market like we're in now, where in 90% of the cases they're selling the house for less than they paid for it, it's just not going to be there, and you're going to end up spending a lot of your energy and time in marketing this home and not achieving a sale at the end of the day. So you need to really interrogate your seller carefully, and it sometimes takes a long time before the real reason for sale actually emerges. You've got to get to know your seller. Your seller's got to trust you before you actually understand what the real reason for selling is. Sometimes sellers aren't honest and open about that, so that can be a difficulty. But establishing that reason for sale for me is everything.
So we'll go into the other panelists now, but on that point, how do you build that relationship, and what are you doing to determine that real reason so you can get that connection, so you can then, first of all, find out if it's a mandate worth selling, if it's worth your professional time, and second of all, then getting them to choose you as their agent?
So I think it probably goes with having a track record. If you have a track record of sales in the area, and you are seen as perceived to be the go-to agent in your area, you already have a reputation and a level of trust, and that certainly helps. That's where elements like social media play a big part, because you're already building a relationship with your database, your clientele, without them physically knowing you. Sort of your reputation precedes you, as it were. So, I think having that physical presence in the area and being sort of seen to be the active agent in your area, firstly, goes a long way to attracting those leads.
Okay, great. Jonathan, what can you add?
Yeah, I think trust is built over time. It might open the door to begin, as you described, but then it's that ongoing communication and feedback every single day.
Okay, great. Edgar?
Yeah, to add on to that, I came across a great analogy where someone said, I think we should really take on our mandates as, a relationship that you'd like to establish. And if you were going to a nightclub, you wouldn't necessarily say, hey, I just saw your properties there and I'd like to list it for you, If you met a girl at the nightclub, you'd first introduce yourself, let them know who you are. If they'd like the first impression, then they'll say yes or no. And I think the work starts from, the opportunity. If they say yes, then I think, don't lose communication. I think the mistake that we make often is that we get excited to get the mandate after working so long. That's the 3 months of following up with the seller and just finding out how the sale is going. So I think it's very important to touch base every now and then, every month, and it establishes some form of trust. I think over the time, it'll also give you an idea to refer to other properties that you can compare with that similar home. I think it's best to always compare apples with apples, oranges with oranges, and somehow if you educate your sellers, it just brings them to a realistic price that we can, sell at.
Okay, great. So what are some, so what is a process, to, and some strategies to use to say you've got this lead, and ultimately you want to mandate what now we're talking about, we're still on quality mandates. We want to create, we want to close a mandate which I'm going to be confident of selling and putting my effort into. So from the lead, we've spoken a bit about relationships building, but what are some other strategies you use to close that quality mandate? And I mean, so that's in the entirety of what we've said is quality.
So I think we need to take a step back and go, how do you get the lead in the first place? Because I think the lead generation is really the business that we're in. We're in the business of generating leads, right? And so it's the quality of the lead that you're generating, and how do we generate those leads? And for me, there's a couple of strategies, and you'll hear me talk about it a bit later, but show houses for me are a vital lead generation source, both for buyers and for sellers. If owners and sellers in your area are visiting your show days, there's a reason for that. And you need to stick to those owners and sellers like glue, because they wouldn't just be attending a show day if they weren't either considering selling their own home in the future or weren't interested in the property market in their area. So show days for me are one really good source of leads. And the second for me is referrals. Building a referral-based business. Obviously, that's the holy grail for us as estate agents, is to build a referral-based system where the business comes to you and you don't have to go to it. And there's various ways of building that sort of referral-based system. But you need to essentially educate your clientele to refer leads to you. So anybody that you are talking to, having conversations with on a daily basis, remind them that you're an estate agent and encourage them to offer you to refer business to you, so that when they're in conversation with their family members, friends at a braai, and somebody mentions that they're selling their home, your name should go off as a light bulb in their head. So that building that referral-based system for me is also really important.
Okay, great. And then, so now in front of the client, what strategies do you use to kind of seal the deal on that mandate?
Look, I think one thing that I've really been strong at was just referring to the amount of sales that we've done, how we work collaboratively together as a team, as a unit. I think also highlighting how dynamic the team is. I think people really want to buy into people that are very creative, have new ideas, very innovative. I think that's one thing that I've boasted a lot in my pitch when it comes to landing mandates. I first describe where I'm from in terms of like what company am I representing, how do we work at the company, how seamless the transactions are from like one agent to another. If you're working from the north to the south, that's very seamless. And I think that's also great because then, we've spoken a lot about collaboration. So if we are able to highlight to our potential sellers that we collaborate a lot, that just gives them a sense of that, we're not really putting out their properties out there with several other agencies, but we are able to open up the door to collaborate with other agencies and try to determine the high price or achieve the high price possible in the listing.
Thanks, Edgar. Jonathan, in my dealings with you in the past, you've said to me that this is actually a great market. You're quite enjoying it, you're doing great. So what are some of the things that you secretly can share with us that enables you to be able to experience that and say that?
So Brad mentioned having a show house and sellers coming through houses. You want buyers to visit, but when a seller comes through, they're actually interviewing you. And that is the easiest lead to zone in on why are you coming to look at your neighbor's house. But to answer your question about what makes this market good, I think this market's a very clean, straightforward market. Sellers are more in touch with the conditions that we're in than ever before. They read the exact same newspapers. They watch the same news bulletins that our buyers are watching. And so when a seller gets to interview an agent and finds out, actually the market isn't so good from a value point of view, we're still doing volume, but the values have declined, they take the news quite well. And then, of course, our buyers are so well educated, you can't pull the wool over a buyer's eyes right now. They have done so much online shopping. By the time they come through your door, they know how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, how long it's been on the market.
Okay, great. Cool. So moving on to price counseling sellers. It kind of dovetails with what we've just been talking about. That old thing is that I'm at 10 million and the market, is probably at 8 million, and we're trying to pull that difference, create that difference in that gap, make it smaller. So, but an experienced agent, I mean, from Jonathan, from your perspective, are you experiencing that, or are you getting the match up between the buyer and the seller? How quickly are you getting that match up, and how do you do that?
So I'm a bit of a lazy agent. I don't like sitting on stock for more than 60 days. You cannot wait for month one to adjust the price. You need to adjust the price after week one. And so you should be able to provide stats and give feedback to your seller that we're getting the views, we're not getting the leads, we're not getting the traffic, and we do need to change this. We need to tweak it now. The market, I've always used the analogy about a house doesn't blush, but a seller does. We quickly need to adjust the price, and the seller needs to accept that the price we thought was the right price isn't going to work in the current market.
Okay, well, I mean, that's easier said than done. I mean, Brad, what are sellers saying in that situation?
Yeah, well, I think communication is key. And as Jonathan says, it begins from the time you take the mandate. Communication about the market, about what buyers are saying about the property, it has to be communicated back to the seller consistently and accurately. So that accuracy of communication for me is vital. And it begins right from the mandate stage. And if you are communicating with your seller, you should be able to help them to understand where the market is seeing value. And as Jonathan said, it is easier in this market than it ever has been. I've been in this industry long enough to remember the days when we had a strong seller's market, where it was the reverse of what we have now. And back then, prices were skyrocketing every year, and there were agents aplenty, and it was easy for a seller to boot you and get the next agent in, because they knew that they could pretty much ask what they wanted for their house. Property values were skyrocketing, but now it's the reverse. We've really got to be communicating accurately with our seller on a very regular basis. So
Edgar, so I mean the emotional aspect of it. So, like, it's easy for us. Well, it's relatively. I mean, as agents, but I mean, you should have been in the conversation in the kitchen when I was talking to my wife about losing, like, hundreds of thousands, huge, a ridiculous amount of money. There's a huge emotional aspect of it, which luckily my wife and I love each other a lot, so we had a healthy conversation or debate. But I mean, so how do you deal with that from a seller's perspective? What about the emotional aspect?
So I'm going to reference, I think, my layers episode on Listing Jozi Season 2, right? It was an interaction that I had with Graham. The house was on the market for, I think, 14. I said, look, my buyer just wants to offer you 8, 9. He's like, go yourself, right? But I think there, realistically speaking, and no one talks of it, after the show, that the property actually sold for 8, 9. So I think the mistake there was that, not really a mistake, I would say. It's just like what Brad said, the delivery, how you communicate with your sellers is really important. So are you going to waste time and wait for maybe 3 months, 6 months, 9 months to actually get the correct price? Or are you going to have the tough conversation with your sellers? So I think essentially, if you are in a relationship, communication is key, and the tough tough conversations are the ones that we need to have. And similar applies to when you are approaching your sellers. That's what you need to prepare them. Let them know, look, I know you expected this much, but realistically speaking, we might be here. And that's the open conversation I have from the get-go. Just to prep them, with the process. I too don't like to have a listing on the market for more than 90 days. If it sells within 30, that's amazing. But I mean, after 30 days, if we haven't gotten any inquiries, more than 5 or at least 1, but please God, let's talk about the pricing. So yeah, I referenced that as my interaction with Graham, where he expected 11,500,000, and he only got an offer of 8,900,000. And I think that could have saved the sellers so much time and their plans, to at least move on with their life. I'm currently trying to finalize one where we have a cash buyer that's taking their time. Literally placed 100,000 in the beginning of this year. The complete value of that property is not that much, it's 900,000, so the cash balance to that is about 600, right? He's paid already 300, but that has taken so much time for us to get the balance. And I think, what's helped us to retain the listing, the property at the price that we've concluded it at, was just having communication, and the tough communication. I mean, the tough conversations are very important. I think that's what I'm trying to draw across.
I don't shy away
thanks.
from those conversations.
Yeah, so Jonathan, so from your perspective, what are some practical strategies that you actually use?
So just getting back to our ethics talk, we had the slideshow 10 minutes ago. We have an ethical responsibility to be transparent. We cannot fluff the figures, we cannot tell the seller what they want to hear. Sooner or later, you have to face facts and report back honestly on the buyer's feedback, honestly on the number of leads and where the shortfall is or where the gap's coming in. That's the easiest way to communicate bad news.
Okay, and Brad?
And I think ultimately the buyer is going to decide. I'm regularly shocked by where properties ultimately sell in this market. So we, as estate agents, sometimes get it wrong. We can't assume that we know the value, because sometimes we surprise ourselves, right? So I think what's important is to understand that we don't know the value necessarily ourselves, and that sometimes this market will teach us where the value is going to be, but communicating that clearly to the seller. Just on the point of the emotional journey that the seller goes through, I think we need to understand that it is a very emotional process. I'm going through it myself at the moment. I'm trying to sell my own home in Parkview. I'm telling you, my wife is one of the toughest clients I've ever had.
Tell me about it.
Making my life a misery. She's even telling me I must get my competitors to sell their house because she said it feels like I can't sell my own home. But it is a hugely emotional process for any seller to go through, particularly at a time like this where they are faced with real losses on the value of their home. So I think you just need to understand that as the agent. Approach it from that point of view, the fact that it is an emotional process for the seller to go through, and you have to walk the seller along this emotional journey. And it does take time. As much as we'd like to conclude the deal in 6 weeks or 2 months, sometimes it takes time to walk your seller through that process, and you have to help them, to educate them to see where the market is seeing value.
So when you talk about education, and we mentioned data, what are the kind of specifics that you are tracking and that you are reporting to the client to help them to see the light? Go, Jonathan.
Sellers love graphs, they love stats, they love to see the activity level, that sales funnel that Lesego referred to earlier. The sales funnel is the easiest one to show the number of online views. My office will laugh, we call it Tinder for houses. Swiping right is not what you want buyers to do. You want the buyer to look at the picture, like the price, and make contact. And so showing the number of online views relative to the number of leads. At the moment, we're running at 1 in 100, 1 lead per 100 views. And we don't like that, but that's where the market is.
So 100 views, what do you mean specifically?
100 online views to get 1 proper lead.
And a lead, is that someone who comes to see the property, or someone?
It's an inquiry. We still have to qualify the lead.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But yeah, on an incorrectly priced, we can run up to 200, 300 online views per single lead.
So in other words, if you're seeing a 200 or 300 views, online views versus 1 lead, that for you is an indicator that you can tell.
Didn't like the waist measurement, yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't like the price. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are all like practical things that we can learn, which makes our lives with the sellers a lot easier. Brad?
Yeah, do you all know that you can download the statistics from Property 24? I don't know if you're all aware of that. Sometimes agents don't know that. If you don't have access to it, make sure you have access to it, because it's a critical price counseling tool. I use it all the time. And you can filter it by unique clicks as well. So in other words, not one person clicking 1,000 times on the same listing, but if it's coming from the same IP address, it filters out multiple clicks from the same IP address. So you can show your seller there are 100 individuals who have viewed your home, or 1,000 individuals who viewed your home, and we've only had, as Jonathan says, 1 or 2 clicks. What does that tell you? It immediately tells you that we're getting eyeballs on the listing, but it's not converting into buyers want to come and see the house. So that right there is a problem. There's a disconnect. So typically it's the price, and it opens the door to having that conversation with the seller. So Property 24 stats is one. Buyers, the feedback from the buyers. They will be giving you their very honest feedback. And that's why it's critical to get the feet through the door. If you're not getting feet through the door, you're not getting the feedback that you need to give to your seller. So buyer feedback is very important. I think Edgar alluded to it earlier. If you have to give your seller feedback after every viewing, not just once a month. Every time you bring a buyer through the house, make sure you follow up with the seller, telling them the feedback about the viewing, either in person immediately after the viewing or after a phone call after the viewing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Before we just have concluding comments, the one question I've got is, what was it now?
You want to sell your house?
Yeah, no, no, thank you. I know I've got 120 people here that are going to queue up, and I'm going to get a phone call from, especially if they get my business card now during lunch. Okay, cool. So I've got, say, 30 mandates and 25. This is slightly off the trail, but it's a question. Some mandates, especially some agents, especially those that are kind of relatively new in the market and in certain market types, I've got, say, 20 mandates, but 18 of them are open. Now, price counseling, I presume, in that market, in that particular scenario, is impossible. What would you advise an agent that is in that scenario? Because I see a fair amount of that.
I wouldn't encourage my staff to take open mandates.
Okay.
In fact, I won't let my staff take open mandates.
Okay, great. Cool. I mean, we'll have another panel discussion next year as to, okay, how do we convert all those prospects to your sole mandate? But yeah, I mean, but that's a good point.
So we are on a drive right now to say quantity versus quality. Quantity of agents doesn't produce more buyers. I think we all agree on that one. And so you have to be firm on quality, and that way you can spend more money on marketing, and that'll bring you the buyer that you need. Shotgun approach doesn't work in this economy.
Okay, big wisdom in that one. Yeah, carry on.
But as a new agent, I agree with Jonathan. That is the sort of holy grail. You want sole mandates and quality sole mandates. But as a new agent, that may not be realistic or practical. So in the beginning, if you're starting out, you do need to take on stock and listings and have your board up. At least have a presence so that you can start generating those leads to ultimately have more sole mandates stock. So perhaps don't exclude it altogether if it's a source of leads and stock for you.
But an agent with a highly experienced agent with 7 sole mandates versus an inexperienced agent with 20 open mandates, the 7 mandates is actually the better figure.
100%.
And I guess that's part of the definition we need to be aware of. What kind of mandates do I actually have? That's why I refer to quality. An open mandate with a highly priced open mandate is not a quality mandate, and doesn't almost really count because it's not going to pay the bills other than give you a bit of exposure to get yourself into the market. Okay, cool. Edgar?
I'm just going to add, I think with me, I would probably say I don't really have like a negative connotation to it. I do try my level best to stand out if I feel like a property has been out there for quite some time with other agents and they haven't put so much effort. That's where opportunity is. Actually have gotten quite a few other mandates by just seeing what's out there and feeling that, maybe your agent isn't servicing you well enough for the property. And if you are able to, reconsider, I'm more than happy. I think then what I'm looking for at that point in time is to get through the door. Just to try show that, being and having your listing on an open mandate platform is not necessarily the greatest way. Let's have a discussion. Maybe you didn't have a discussion with your previous agency and they were okay to put it on ERL or multiple platforms. Let's have a discussion and see the importance of converting it to multiple marketing strategies and, resorting to like the sole stream of marketing your property. So I do now and then tackle properties that have like 5 agents and see if I can reconvert them to like marketing just us for a month or 2.
Okay, fine, fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool. Just in closing, if we can just have closing comments from each of you, starting with Jonathan, on anything to do with landing quality mandates or price counseling property sellers to accept lower selling prices. Any last comments or advice you would give to us?
Yeah, I would say stick to your guns and be confident in what you bring to the table, what you bring to the party. And a sole mandate is what you should be focusing on in order to offer good service and close the deal and earn the commission. Prostituting yourself on open mandates is a bad habit.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jonathan. Brad?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I agree. Soul mandates are what you should focus on. And I think it goes back to, again, the valuation stage. At the time that you're in front of the seller, giving them the valuation, giving them the honest feedback doesn't help to tell them what they want to hear. And perhaps you won't get the mandate the first time around, but particularly at the higher end, we're seeing that it is taking longer. And perhaps you don't want to be the first sole mandate agent on the property, particularly if it's coming on at a high price. But keep in touch with that seller. There's no harm, I believe, in just keeping in touch, keep communicating with that seller, finding out how it's going with the sale of their home. And perhaps your honesty up front will benefit you down the line. If they haven't sold the home after the mandate's ended, perhaps you can pick that home up on a sole mandate second or third in line.
Yeah. Thanks, Brad. Go ahead, Edgar.
So what I'd really like to add on landing a quality mandate is, I think what we've what we've mentioned throughout the whole session till this point is just putting yourself out there. I think you're going to land a perfect quality mandate where someone's really going to buy into you because they've done the research on you. So please, by all means, try utilize social media. Utilize like your Instagram, TikTok. My TikTok grew faster than my Instagram, and I started Instagram way earlier than I did with TikTok. And I think, TikTok gives you views about 400,000, if not 500,000, close to 1 million, even more. And I think that there gives you a great opportunity to then land a quality mandate because someone has done research on you as opposed to the other way around. And then I think they're going to really trust what you have to say at that point, which then brings you to the Paris counseling. I think with the reputation and as long as with what our fellow colleagues said in terms of ethics and how you carry yourself, they will trust the price that you have to offer them.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. That was huge wisdom from our three panelists. Edgar, Brad, Jonathan, thank you so much. We really appreciate your teaching us, and thank you. Give them a hand.